Hello, everybody, and welcome to The High Road for another instalment with your host, Noel C. Blundell, and my learned right-hand man, Remington Liam Blundell. Hello, mate. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you travelling this afternoon?
Good. Pretty fresh.
I got some exciting news to tell you.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Not only now do we have a presence on Facebook under Aimed Motivation Empowerment Network, we also have Spotify, where our podcasts are hosts. This is where you're listening to it, obviously. And we have, as of this week, YouTube.
We have YouTube, do we?
Yes, we're on YouTube now on High Road 9 on YouTube.
That's awesome.
You'll be able to find all our shows on there. So give us a like and a subscribe to let us know you're out there.
That is awesome. And we post all of our episodes on those platforms every week, don't we?
That's correct. And they can also be found on our website at aimedmen.com.
I'm looking this up on YouTube right now.
Are you? Have a look.
Because I wanna see this in the flesh.
Yes. The work's been done and it's up and it's running.
When did we get that organised?
It was organised this week and finalised, which is really, really good. Thanks to all the hard work of my lovely wife, Meg. She worked very diligently and hard to get that up and running, and it's now functional. So all our shows can be found on Spotify and on YouTube.
I found it. Perfect.
Yeah?
Look at that. Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
The High Road 9?
Yep.
Okay, no worries. So keep an eye out for us because we're there. So if you're wandering around and want something entertaining to listen to, you can get us on Spotify.
Actually, no, it's just
YouTube.
the High Road podcast.
It's not High Road 9.
Yeah, we changed the 9.
Okay, no worries. It's the High Road podcast.
On YouTube.
Keep an eye out for that. Today's show is going to be on subliminal messaging, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about that, how our minds are programmed to think in different ways, shapes and forms through subliminal messaging. Do you know anything about subliminal messaging, Rem?
Not very much. I've looked into it recently. There was a huge advertisement campaign and arguments thrown back and forth, debates per se. I think that's a better word about it because it was considered a controversial issue.
Very much so.
Some people deemed it unethical.
Yes.
In a way it isn't. It is, sorry. In a way unethical because subliminal perception is the unconscious awareness of stimuli.
Correct.
So it's like, are you taking advantage of that unconscious? I don't know. A lot of, we're very money orientated in terms of business, so I understand why they did it, but it was a very ethical issue.
It certainly is.
And people call it the devil side of advertisement. So,
well, do they?
Yeah. I know. I've got this one paper here. It's called Between the Devil and the Media.
I was going to say the devil and the deep blue sea. But anyway, the devil and the media, that's much worse. Anyway, there are questions around it, and a couple of them are, what are subliminal messages? Do subliminal messages work?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
From everybody from Coca-Cola to Disney has been accused of using these tactics. Did you know that?
Yeah, definitely.
Few of us seem to know the truth about these messages are and whether or not they are effective. Some say they can control our minds without us even knowing, while others say they don't even exist. How's that? It's so controversial, it's polarised as a subject. So just having a look at some of the stuff I have here, it was an experiment done in 1957, actually, by a fellow named, bear with me for a second, because there was thoughts that people could be programmed through subliminal messaging, but it wasn't certain until these experiments were conducted in 1957. It was a simple experiment where movie cinemas flashed quickly. I think it was in one slide, but on a regular basis. Hungry, eat popcorn was what the show was. And what happened was, it was a still image that was included in the movie, and it was in 1957. Researchers claimed to have flashed the words "eat popcorn" during a movie showing in the hopes of getting people to buy popcorn. Now, as it states, popcorn sales did go up. Did you know that?
Really?
Yes. There was another study conducted in a supermarket where they utilised German music, advertising German music, and they researched the wine sales, When they played German music, German wine sales went up. When they played French music, French wine sales went up, proving that there was a connection between the subliminal messaging in a supermarket and associated sales.
I think it's happening with everything now.
I think you're right too. There's subliminal messaging right across the board with everything we do. And so, how many times you've been walking around a supermarket shopping and you've been in another world, and all of a sudden you're humming a bit of a tune, and it's actually the tune that's quietly going in the background.
Yeah, well, that's right.
In the supermarket. Not only that, you will find between popular songs, which are usually around about 25 years old, because that music is actually matched to the demographic that of people that attend a supermarket. It's permeated with little ads to advertise the supermarket you're shopping from. Have you noticed that?
A little bit.
Well, when you're at the supermarket next, have a listen to what's being piped through the internal stereo system. I think you'll be amazed, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I just think it's fascinating because they did an experiment, if I can recall quickly. I know nothing about this, by the way, but I'll say it anyway. They had people go watch a movie and they flicked, for one frame rate, I think it was some sort of food, and they walked out and sales went up about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's been proven. That was in 1957. That was done with popcorn.
Is that the popcorn one, is it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I thought this one was a Coke one or a Mars bar one or something.
I think there was another one done along those lines as well. The other thing was that I was led to believe it was in some form, shape or form, sorry for the tongue twister, it was made illegal. Might have been in America to do that. You weren't allowed to do that. Cinemas weren't allowed to do that. Like flash popcorn and flash Coca-Cola in there during their movies as subliminal messaging. It was illegal. Now, whether that's still the case today, I don't really know. So anyway, I was just I found it interesting. Some people just think that it's a form of mind control and an insidious mental manipulation on people, which I suppose, I don't know if it could be. You know, mind manipulation is a highly controversial topic, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
And I know it has been spoken about before, but I don't think there's really solid data on the issue, is there?
Not really. Like I've got a paper here that says just quickly that, you know, this unprecedented evidence of the longevity and impact of subliminal messages on the conscious, rational decision making. So this paper investigated subliminal messages exert long-term effects on decision making. I haven't really dived into the paper much. I just stumbled across it now, actually.
Yep. It sounds very interesting, though. If we can, we'll just define the word subliminal just quickly. And the definition of sub is beneath. It's usually used before. It's a word that is attached to another word to indicate below, beneath, sub. Like submarine or subscription or subsidiary. So that's what that definition is. And we have, there's another form of subliminal. There's actually supraliminal as well, which is a stimuli or signals that we don't hear consciously. It's all subconsciously. Hang on, the letter stimulant or signal that we can see or hear, but we are not consciously aware of their impacts on behaviour. That's supraliminal.
Okay. Is there different types of subliminal messages? I've got three here. There's visual, auditory, and a combination of those two, apparently. Those are the three types.
I haven't looked in any scientific journals, but I bet you this has been studied extensively. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, it has been. It was an ethical issue. They had to study it.
Well, good point, mate. Very good point. And I wonder what the outcomes were of subliminal messaging.
Well, I don't think there was much evidence on it because it was
hard to prove.
It was hard to prove
and hard to capture the information whether it was actually a reality or not. I would assume. How would you capture that in a questionnaire?
I've got no idea.
Well,
but
you do the old popcorn experiment, I suppose. Run a theatre, run some popcorn flashes during the movie.
Well, here's a paper here. It's the Subliminal Messages Between the Devil and the Media. Vokey and Reed, 1985, examined the controversial public issue of subliminal messages in advertising and popular music. 65 undergraduates completed a series of tasks to determine whether any evidence exists that such messages affect behaviour. They found no evidence to support such claim and suggest that the apparent presence of backward messaging or messages in popular music is more a function of active construction on the part of the receiver than the existence of the messages themselves.
Well, I think you might find that that'll be the argument right across the board.
Yep.
So all you listeners out there, if you want to comment on subliminal messaging, whether you believe it's an actual fact or it's true or just it's a fallacy, please send us a line because we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I've just found this that research here in 1999, researchers put these kind of messages to the test in Britain's supermarkets by changing the store music. The supraliminal stimulus on alternating days in order to encourage customers to buy either French or German wine. Sure enough, when German music was played, German wine outsold French wine. When French music was played, French sales were higher. Questionnaires filled out by shoppers afterwards demonstrated that they were aware of the music but unaware of the effect it seemed to have on their behaviour. There you go. Well, that would constitute evidence, although it's not a scientific paper. It's not the scientific paper that was the outcome of that experiment. That sounds very vox poppy, doesn't it? Like a very unofficial sort of let's see what the general public think before we do a formal research.
Yeah. Well, I just named out a paper from 1985. Can I jump to more recent papers?
Yes, please do.
They've had a change of heart. There is a growing body of evidence suggesting that subliminal messages can be used to change our thoughts, attitudes, emotions, and actions. Van Gale and colleagues 2012, Hassan 2013 reported that subliminal stimulation was shown to influence current moods. That was by Monahan and colleagues 2000. Political attitudes, Hassan, so subliminal messages can impact political attitudes. That was by Weinberger and Weston 2008. It can impact intentions. That was by Hassan et al. 2007. Choices and decisions and cognitive strategies by other, I can't really pronounce them and I'm not going to go give it a go, but other researchers have determined that. So, strangely enough, over the last 2 decades, they've actually shown that subliminal messages can impact everything: moods, political orientation, intentions, cognitive strategies, ethics, choices, decisions. So, no wonder that it does impact decision-making long term.
I get that general feeling realistically. I know that's just my opinion, and I have no data to back that up. But I do get that general feeling. And I also get a bit of a feeling that this is, in today's society, this is a bit of an undercurrent that underpins stress. What would you think?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really getting that feeling, and with the narratives and the discussions that are going around, particularly in our media, around violence against women, domestic violence, and men being perpetrators, I think that is underpinning some very real stress levels, and in a subliminal way.
Yeah, well, just here, actually, I've just looked that up just quickly. You are right. It's the effects of subliminal and, is it supraliminal stress on symptoms of anxiety?
Yes.
Yes. According to Tyree, Lewis, and Lee in 1978, this is going way back.
Yes.
The results showed that ratings of anxiety were significantly increased under subliminal emotive conditions and reduced following subliminal neutral exposure. Correlations between psych and somatic symptoms of anxiety were significantly higher under supraliminal conditions compared with subliminal ones. So you got there's some evidence right there from 1978.
Well, that's been around for a long time then. And I can't help but feeling in today's society that seems to be getting a little bit worse. I know our Prime Minister came out and announced the other day that we had a national crisis of domestic violence, but then there's been a number of commentators come out and state that in accordance with the data released from the Australian Criminology Department of Criminology and data capture around violence in our community, that violence is down 75% since the department was implemented in 1992. It's gone down from 1.8 persons murdered in a domestic situation down to 0.8. It's dropped 75% in that period of time.
Okay, wow.
Yes, there has been a slight increase in domestic violence, domestic partner murder just recently, but it's still nowhere near the 75% to bring it back to 1992 levels. That's a fact, and that all that data is available on that government website.
That's fascinating. How's it? And haven't we had a population increase too?
We have a significant population increase. I looked at ABS this morning, Australian Bureau of Statistics. Its latest population figures was 26,816,000. So we've nearly gone up another million to 29 million. Yes, we have. We've had significant...
Over the last 30 years? Or
well, I'm just talking over the last 12 months.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, over the last 30 years, we've had significant population increase with a 75% decrease in murder.
I think it was 10 million more people over the last 30 years in Australia.
That sounds very, very accurate, mate. And I tend to feel that those statistics, I'm talking statistically here, and by some of the most prominent data collection organisations that we have in this country, Australian Bureau of Statistics for one, and the Australian Department of Criminology, they're pretty formidable departments, making those statements sort of flies in the face of what our politicians are stating, that we're in a national crisis of domestic violence.
Yeah.
That's also being backed up by ABC. There's ABC reports here. Oh, here we go. Homicide in Australia reports shows almost half the women murdered last financial year were killed by current or former intimate partners. That's the narrative, and that's the headlines that's being moved forward. But as it turns out, when you dig deeper into that those statistics, and I would like to say, I don't condone domestic violence or murder in any way, shape, or form. Any loss is a catastrophe for those families that are left behind, and it's unwarranted and uncalled for. I'm purely looking at the statistical data and whether it warrants the subliminal messaging that we all face on a daily basis, particularly men and women. It's stated here that out of 247 homicide victims in 22-23 financial year, which has increased up from 234 in that period of time, of those, 75 of them were women out of the 247, and 34 of them were victims of intimate partner violence, 34 of them over the year, which constitutes the 49% where ABC is getting their 50% of people are murdered in domestic situations. But I'd just like to bring the attention that's not spoken about is out of the 247 homicide victims, which 75 were women, I think that works out to around about 172 murder victims in that same period, that's 22-23 financial year, were men.
Wow.
So that's 2 times the number. The men are being murdered at twice the rate of women. But I mean, what I'm getting back to is we're not talking about these issues. It's not a balanced argument. It seems to be sensationalised. And I wonder how much this is affecting men and women subliminally. You know, if women are getting around thinking that they are prey and they're going to be murdered, being preyed on, followed and murdered by men, well, how much do you feel getting around a society where 50% of the population is male?
Well, is that part of the subliminal messaging?
Well, I'm thinking, if there's headlines and discussions along these lines where our highest leaders are standing up in public forums and stating that we're of a national crisis, followed by our national media company, the ABC. ABC stands for Australian Broadcast Company, right? Are stating figures like this when taking them out of context. I think there is a subliminal message there, and for young men too. The subliminal message for young men is that you are a murderer and a rapist, right? And murderers and rapists in our community, in our society,
get locked up,
are devalued.
Yeah.
They are the social outcasts. Well, 100% of men are under this banner. There must be a subliminal message in that.
Yep.
As it turns out, it's around about 1% of people who actually engage in domestic violence. Do you know that?
Like out of all Australian population? Or
Yeah,
the world?
Australian population.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think it's 1% of men. So therefore, 99% of men don't condone, don't engage, and are not perpetrators of domestic violence.
Yeah, and if you are, you're a scumbag. That's the end
Well,
of it.
there you go.
Yeah.
And that's, you're a scumbag. And there are other ways and means to deal with conflict, particularly with your partner, and it doesn't take violence to get there. These are some of the issues that aren't being spoken, so it's not spoken about. So it's not a balanced argument. And that's a bit of an issue that I'm trying to bring forward here, is we need to balance up the argument before we can actually start to address domestic violence. Now, there's a lot of money, government money and government initiatives and going into this.
Just quickly, sorry. The national crisis, and this is election year.
Yes.
Could that be just a subliminal message to move political orientation? Because I just had a paper up before just then saying that it is possible that subliminal messaging can change political attitudes and swing people's orientation.
Well, there is an argument that's stating that argument has potential. Yes, which is a bit of a concern, isn't it? Because is that really our what we want? Is that our desire?
No, not at all. But I think it's almost normalised that politicians do that. They subliminal message in certain ways to change political orientation. They got all the tricks up their sleeve.
Oh yes, they have it. They have all scientific and all media at their disposal, and they implement it relentlessly throughout an election period. We're seeing that at the moment locally in our region of Gippsland, Victoria, Australia, and we're also seeing that just beginning to play out now federally, because we have a federal election that'll be called between now and May 2025, and people are suggesting it's going to come earlier than later. So yes, we're going to see a lot more of that over the coming months. We're just sort of getting up to speed with that. But I thought those subliminal messages would be having a impact
definitely
on people. Do you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is unethical in a way, because if you're not consenting to something you're not aware of,
yep,
it's deemed unethical.
Yes,
that's been in research for decades.
Yes.
So I do see how it's an ethical issue.
And I'm concerned about people's stress levels. Because if they have a subliminal message like that one we just unpacked, like women are victims and men are perpetrators,
yep,
and women are prey, like what a terrible way to think of yourself. It'd be just walking down the street or walking around your own home, you'd be terrified. In saying that, statistically, the safest demographic in the Western world is a middle-aged woman.
Yes,
right. And Australia is one of the safest places on planet Earth.
Yeah, it is.
Right? We are just blessed with a regulated society that is extremely safe. We are unarmed. We've had most of our arms removed from us, and so therefore, it's you feel free to you can walk the streets quite freely.
Yeah, and we're getting safer. There's a trend. We are getting safer.
And people do forget that we are increasing in population significantly every year. So it's not, all this data has been collected on a reduced population. So we're increasing in size and reducing in crime.
Well, in a reverse way, why wouldn't they, or political figures, do that? Why wouldn't they do that if if fear is emotion that can be felt through subliminal messaging, that can swing votes, it'd be stupid not to consider that going on, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's like if
that's the case,
a fearful person needs to be directed.
Yes.
That's common sense.
And yes, and with headlines better be a bit careful here. But if you get what I mean, if you got headlines that from our national broadcast, about homicide in Australian reports show half of women murdered last financial, it's a big statement. Here's another one here: 11 more women have died violently in 2024. It's very grandiose, and as I said, no loss of life is warranted. No violence is warranted. I do not advocate violence in any way, shape or form. Every loss of life is a catastrophe, right? I really genuinely mean that. But I mean, sensationalising it here, the discourse and the language being used is very inflammatory. If I flip over, this is directly targeted to men being the perpetrators and women being the victims, and there seems to be quite a bit of that. If I flick into another article, and this is by the ABC, but it hasn't been as prevalent as we would like to see. Woman charged after man allegedly fatally stabbed in domestic violence incident in Sydney. So it even reads differently. This is a woman. There's been a domestic situation, and the lady has had an outburst, and the partner, the male partner of this relationship, has lost his life. Okay, again, no excuse. It's terrible. It's a catastrophe. But in the wording, the wording states, this is the headline: Woman charged after man allegedly fatally stabbed in domestic violence incident in Sydney. It's worded weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's worded very differently. They've been doing that for decades too.
Yes, well, I think, again, what is the subliminal message being passed? And I think we need to have a bit of a discussion about that one way or the other. I don't know. What do you think? And what do you think out there? Are we getting concerned for nothing? Is this something that is just it looks that way, but it's not so? What do you guys think?
I think it's a bit unfortunate that people don't even bother thinking about it twice. I think it takes someone that is aware of it, but also can read between the lines.
Well, I think you're right. Now, I think we need to start having a bit of a discussion around some of these issues, because I feel it's detrimental on the average, everyday man and woman.
Yeah.
Right? And particularly our young men and women, right? Particularly young people who are just coming out of high school, and they're going into the workforce, and they're starting their lives, and they're starting to access their freedom and their adulthood and the greatness and wonderfulness of life. Right?
Yeah, it was very.
But there's young women are thinking, oh, I'm a prey. I've got to protect myself from every interaction out there, and men are cowering and hiding in their mother's bedrooms because they're not a murderer and a rapist.
Yeah.
It's not a good premise to start from. Right?
Victim mentality is very easy to adopt.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's absolutely
that needs to be looked at. If they create victims,
yes,
they can swing everything.
Correct. And if there is a victim, if there is a victim identified, there has to be a victimizer, a perpetrator.
Yep.
Because you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that again creates stress too. Imagine that as the undercurrent of stress. Then you go into the workplace and take on a pretty active, high impact role in a company, right? So you're turning up for work to learn your trade, right? To ply your skills in that trade with an undercurrent of stress already. See how anyway, we'll talk about that some more as we go forward, because we do want to get into stress at work, business stress, and how to alleviate stress in the workplace, particularly for the benefit of your mental health. We're going to go down that road in a number of episodes moving forward anyway, so stay tuned with that. But I was just wondering what that undercurrent that underpins our stress level before we start to enter our daily activities.
Well, yeah, I think people are given reason to be victim on a silver platter. Like some people just...
Oh, in this day and age, yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're just... victim mentality is so easy. It's
Yes.
just... It's like, if I'm a victim, then I should be listened to. But
Yes.
then people are victims to everything.
Yes.
It's just...
And then if you're a victim, right,
Yeah.
there's as I said, there's a perpetrator. So if there's a perpetrator, there's someone there for you to hang all the problems of your life on.
Yep.
It's their fault. So you're never internalizing anything. So therefore, you're limiting your ability to go inside yourself to ask the questions for internal growth to move forward.
Yeah.
How are you expected to grow if you never look internally?
Well, well, that's right. And there's some victims out there that have been through this shit, and I get it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not
There
talking
is
about
victims.
that. I'm
No.
not talking about that. I'm talking
No.
about victimhood mentality, which
Yes.
actually takes away from actual victims.
Yes.
It's like actual victims are being robbed
Yes.
of actual victimhood.
Yes.
People that adopt the victimhood mentality and a herd mentality are just damaging it further, in my opinion.
Correct.
Because it's easy.
Yes.
That's all it is. It's easy.
Yes. But it's also easy because you never have to look at yourself,
Yeah.
right? And that's a really dangerous premise to come from, right? I think I could look. Other people might have a different opinion on this, but for us to grow, we must be able to look inwardly. We must look at what annoys us. We must look at ourselves. We must look at our programming and our fallacies and our fantasies, and have a look at all that and how that fits into the greater scheme of society and how I fit into that scheme. And if you're a perpetual victim, you always find yourself a victim. You always have a perpetrator who's acting against you. If that perpetrator is acting against you, that perpetrator, you'll hang all the nuances and all the inadequacies of your life on that perpetrator. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. It's a very serious psychological concept.
It is indeed.
But I think looking within is a huge one, because it's a proper mindset. It's
Yes.
been defined, research and everything in psychological science.
Correct.
It's no joke.
Yes.
It's, a victim mentality
Yes.
is a real thing.
Correct. And if you're going through adolescence at a very vulnerable stage of life, we're talking 16 through to about 24, you're struggling with your identity already. And if your identity is a victim, and that everybody that places you in that situation of being a victim is a perpetrator who's setting forth a plan to upset you and make you manifest as a victim, you're not, and you accept that, and you identify as a victim. Wow. Well, that's another issue on top of your identity you're trying to work out. So you got to work through that and your identity.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And with a subliminal messaging that comes to us from our media, like our Prime Minister and like our State Premier, with the First Ministry of Changing Men's Behaviour, with Mr. Tim Richardson as the Minister.
I did not know about that.
Oh, didn't you?
No.
Oh, well, hang on, let me fill you in. Wait just a moment.
Just quickly.
Not that I like to get political or anything like that. Our Premier, Jacinta Allen, has just instituted a role and a minister, and it is for the change of men's behaviour ministerial. I think it's a secretary position.
Oh, right.
So that's what he does. He's going to look at implementing programs to change men's behaviour.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising. They're just trying to divide men and women.
But the whole label of it indicates that we need our behaviour changed.
Yeah.
Whereas we've just established 1% of men have an issue with domestic violence, 99% don't. So how come men need a minister and a government intervention to change their behaviour, but 99% of them don't engage in the behaviour that the government suggests they need to change? Can you work that out?
No.
Is there a rationale in that?
I've got no idea.
Yeah, well,
I tend to stick away from it, if I'm honest, because I didn't even know any of that.
Yeah, well, that's true. I've been following the narrative actually as it unfolds, and they're recommending that men actually speak out about that, and it's probably a good idea because I know I don't mind. I don't need my behaviour changed. I'm quite capable of monitoring my behaviour and changing my behaviour as necessary, and I do not advocate or participate in any violence. Verbal, no violence, period. No, none.
Me too.
You're the same.
Oh, exactly the same.
So is my father, so is my grandfather, so is your grandfather, so is, I'd say, like 100% of the men I know.
Yeah, same.
Right? So I need that behavioural change in what? By whom? What for? Anyway, we do need to speak about this issue going forward because it's very draconian in nature. And I don't like to get political, but I just felt that was interesting. And that's possibly the subliminal messaging that I've been receiving that's raised my stresses around this issue. Boom, boom. There you go. Hey?
Well, I can't see how it's contributing to fixing any of it, if that makes sense. Because I don't think it's encouraging men to come out and talk. I think it's just pushing them away.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It's pushing them away. It's an unbalanced argument, and we're not addressing the issue. If you're only going to report one side of the issue, it's like turning up at Collingwood and Carlton. They're going to play the. Is it Anzac Day? No, it's Collingwood and Essendon playing Anzac Day, isn't it? I don't know. Collingwood and Carlton turn up on Saturday to play the football. Well, all the commentators in the studio box who are calling the game, they only call the Collingwood players.
Yeah.
What sort of game would you get then?
Half a game.
Well, that's interesting. I'm just putting the scenario there. It might be a very poor metaphor, but have a think about it for a minute, because that's what we've got going on here with this issue. And I don't condone domestic violence. And I'm not a rape apologist. They are unacceptable behaviours right across the board,
and they should be locked up.
Absolutely, 100%. That's why we have jails.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why we have men who adjudicate over those cases to ensure those men are carcerated for a long period of time. That has been going on in our society for many, 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 many hundreds of years, right? Those systems are in place. We do that. And as a consequence. Anyway, I think, is there anything else you'd like to add to that, mate?
No, this conversation has honestly opened up a huge kind of thing for me, because subliminal messaging is in every single thing we look at and everything we view and everything we read and all of it. So I guess like a thing that I'd say is just like try read between the lines if you can. What's the undercurrent that they're trying to portray? What's your unconscious picking up on? But unconscious picking up. I meant like, what do you feel? Because I think a lot of it comes from emotion. Actually, I think emotion's one of the bigger ones they manipulate through subliminal messaging.
I tend to agree with you. I think what the issue is, Ram, and we'll close on this, is that we need to identify that it potentially maybe would have an impact on you. We have to identify that this is a reality.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's actually subconscious, something we're getting around and not consciously taken on board, right? And turning that around and remembering, that this is actually taken place. And for all those out there who question whether that's true or not, that your mind can be changed by subliminal little messaging, well, I suggest to you that you think of some jingles, like the jingle to the Mortein ad with Louie the Fly. That's one example. If you can remember the jingle that goes along with the Collingwood Football Club, and you're not a Collingwood supporter, that's, I'd say, a form of subliminal messaging. Now, everybody knows the song. Everybody who was born, 60s, 70s, and potentially 80s, what the Mortein ad with Louie the Fly goes like.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Is that right? So, that's all subliminal messaging and reinforcing. And, you'll be walking around and the TV's going, you're not particularly even watching it, but you're hearing it. It's going in through other senses and still being programmed into your mind. So that's a form of subliminal messaging. So it does work. And we need to start paying attention to it. I might finish up there, mate. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. Just another example is like, in the FedEx logo, they've got like an arrow, like a perfect arrow between the uppercase E and the lowercase X. And that type of subliminal messaging, Tostitos, the two T's between Tostitos is two people holding a chip and on top of the eye between T-toes is red, so it looks like chip dipped in sauce.
Okay.
That type of subliminal messaging. Those are just examples I looked up here, and I hope they made sense. But
there's lots.
There's lots. I'm scrolling through images, and it is everywhere.
There's audible subliminal messages. Yep. There's visual subliminal messages. I dare say there'd be other sensory subliminal messages as well. Right?
Yeah, and this would be another topic, but a lot of subliminal messages that I looked at a long time ago, a few years back, was in childhood films, the inappropriate sexual portrayals of just inappropriate inmages for children to watch.
And Disney, as we mentioned earlier, Disney has been accused of those type of things as well.
Yeah, that was one I just wanted to touch on quickly.
Yeah, well, there's a whole another podcast in that alone.
Yeah, because I think in childhood films there was a lot of subliminal sexual messages coming out.
Yes, absolutely. And I think a lot of that had come back to our initial studies into classic conditioning and Skinner's experiments and Pavlov's experiments with his dogs would come into those discussions, particularly with visual stimuli and visual subliminal messaging and programming. See, because when you see the golden arches on the highway, what do you think?
McDonald's.
Food, right? Immediately. And if you're hungry, you will salivate, right? Now you can see the golden arches for up to a kilometre away. So you've got quite a bit of time to think about it and process that cognitively before you get to the drive-through. You don't even have to get out of your car. See how that's being used as subliminally?
Oh, yeah.
Right, so there's a bit of evidence. Anyway, we might wrap that up.
I think that was a great topic, I reckon.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of issues in there.
Absolutely.
But the subliminal messaging, I didn't know had such a profound impact just going over the data just like that is insane. They swing everything.
Yes.
They swing emotions, thoughts, behavior. Originally they may have thought, subliminal messaging can't change behavior, but going through the research over just the last decade, it impacts everything.
Yes.
And it would be stupid to think they don't try swing political orientation. They got every trick up their sleeve.
Yes.
And in election year, I wouldn't be surprised that it'll get interesting again.
Yes, so, it's going to get interesting again. Life is interesting, mate.
But it's a wonderful ride, isn't it?
It certainly is. I'm glad you finished up on that. That's wonderful. All right. Thank you very much for staying with us. We hope that was an interesting conversation. And as I've said prior, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on Facebook, and now you can find us on YouTube or at aimedmen.com. Send us a line. Tell us what you think about your subliminal messaging and your subliminal programming, and we'll have a chat about that again. You take care. Take care, Rem.
Thank you very much. See you guys next time.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.